Hello and welcome. I haven't done a live stream for a while. I was gonna do a few different live streams today, actually, but I wanted to start with this one here, just talking about Spider-Man: No Way Home. Just my thoughts about it, going into spoilers because it's a hard movie to really. You see my Spider-Man shirt, but hard movie to really talk about much without going into heavy spoilers. So first, I just want to do here my overall ranking for Spider-Man movies, starting 9, going up to my favorite, so you can kind of get an idea of just where I have different Spider-Man movies before I talk about Spider-Man: No Way Home itself. And I love Spider-Man, which is why I want to do this video. I have this little Spider-Man thing I got with the 2018 game, with the collector's edition back when it came out by Insomniac Games in 2018. Can't wait for the next Spider-Man game. I'm just really in a great time as a Spider-Man fan right now, between the movies, the games, and whatnot. We're going to be in a stretch here where from 2018 through 2023, every year we're going to have had either an MCU movie, an animated movie, or a game. And some of those years, multiple, such as 2023, and we're getting into this or Cross the Spider Verse Part 2 and Spider-Man 2 game. 2018, you had the 2018 PS4 game as well as Miles Morales animated movie, Into the Spider Verse that year. So just really good time. But anyway, starting with my rankings here, my ninth and least favorite. I'm actually kind of a rare person in that I like all the Spider-Man movies at least somewhat. There's not a Spider-Man movie I would actually consider bad, but number 9, which is Spider-Man 3, that's my least favorite. Still can't say the movie's bad though, because the action scenes are really well done. I like that Harry came back, towards the end to help Peter. The Sandman scene when he first gets his powers, if you will, is beautifully shot. The movie has really good soundtrack, and I like the overall theme of the movie about not living with like vengeance and forgiveness and stuff. So I can't say it's a bad movie, but that's my number 9. Number 8 would be uh hold on. Darn it. Now I'm forgetting my own list here. Going this way. I'm used to going the other way. Number 8 would be Amazing Spider. No, yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 1. No, yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 1 would be my eighth movie. Like the movie overall, the only thing is it's too similar to Spider-Man 1 because of the fact that you're going through the whole, origin story again, basically. That's what hurts. I feel like Amazing Spider-Man 1 and the villain's not as good as Spider-Man 1. My number 7 movie would be my number 7 on the Spider-Man movie list would be Spider-Man 1, because it has a better villain than you had in Amazing Spider-Man 1. And but Spider-Man 1 also hasn't aged great when it comes to CGI and some other stuff. So that's my number 7. Number 6 is Amazing Spider-Man 2. I feel like Amazing Spider-Man 2 is criminally underrated. It's basically a love story at the end of the day, and I just don't understand what people's issues are with Amazing Spider-Man 2. So that's my number 7, right? So 9, right? Like I said, 9 was Spider-Man 3, 8 was Amazing Spider-Man 1, 7 was Spider-Man 1, 6 was Amazing Spider-Man 2. My 5th is Homecoming. Homecoming, I thought, was a solid start for the MCU. I didn't have a lot of problems with the movie overall. My only real issue with Homecoming is I feel like it's the only Spider-Man movie out of all 9 that doesn't really have action that kind of stands out. I feel like all the other Spider-Man movies have at least one action scene that stands out, where I felt like the action scenes in Homecoming were just kind of generic action scenes, nothing really special. But the movie as a whole, I thought was still good. Loved what they did with Vulture. So that's my number 5. My number 4, Into the Spider-Verse. A lot of people have this in the top 3, and I can see why, but I have it at number 4. I feel like it's a good movie. I'm shocked it took as long as it did for them to actually do animated Spider-Man movie. So that's my number four. And glad we're getting more of that. My number three is Far From Home. Felt like Far From Home improved a lot from Homecoming because they really upped the action, and I really liked what they've done with the last two Spider-Man movies, which I'll get into a little bit more of this when I get to No Way Home. But I really like what they've done with in the last two movies with the spider sense. That's something. It's one of Spider-Man's powers that's pretty powerful, and I feel like they've kind of underused in the previous Spider-Man movies. And I feel like the last two, though, they've really used that in a way that's has been pretty cool and stood out, including in Far From Home when you had like the Mysterio fight and Peter at the end basically just fighting blind and just trusting his spider sense, which was pretty cool. So that's my number three. Now my number two is No Way Home, the new one, which I'll talk about more in depth because that's what this video is supposed to be more about. My number one though is still Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 just has everything. It's still actually my all-time favorite movie, not just Spider-Man, but favorite movie. Period. The movie I feel like is just absolutely perfect, and gets a lot of those emotional beats done really well, which is one of the reasons I have it as high. And it's one of the reasons, actually, though, that I feel like No Way Home stands up pretty well on the Spider-Man movie list as well, as it's got a lot of emotional punch. So, yeah, that's my list. So, again, if I'm going 1 through 9, Spider-Man 2 is my number one. Number 2, No Way Home. 3, um, 3 Far From Home. 4, Into the Spider-Verse. 5, crap, now I'm forgetting again. I'm trying to recap here real quick. So number 1, Spider-Man 2. Number 2, No Way Home. 3, Into the Spider-Verse. 4, Homecoming. 5, let me double check something here. Kind of messing up things here real quick, but this will make things a little bit easier in terms of trying to recap what I was trying to say here in terms of 1 through 9. Before I get to talk more about No Way Home, which is what the video was actually supposed to be. Didn't mean to kind of ramble on like this. I thought I would get to that quicker. But yeah, so again, just look at my list real quick because now I'm forgetting. Maybe it should have just started with 1 through 9 rather than going 9 through that way. But yeah, anyway, to recap: number 1, Spider-Man 2, 2, No Way Home, 3, Far From Home, 4, Into Spider-Verse, 5, Homecoming, 6, Amazing Spider-Man 2, 7, Spider-Man 1, 8, Amazing Spider-Man 1, and 9, Spider-Man 3. And one little quick note here. Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is my number 6, I actually think is the most underrated movie I've ever seen in my life, period. Just don't get the complaints about the movie whatsoever. But that I could probably spend an hour talking about that on its own. But okay, so into the No Way Home, which is what I really wanted to talk about. Didn't mean to spend 8 minutes before I got to that. But No Way Home, so trying to think here how to even start this. So No Way Home, it's interesting because you hear people complain. Well, the movie overall is doing great. It's the highest box office Spider-Man movie of all time now. It would probably be making even a little bit more if it wasn't for COVID and lockdowns situations that are going on. And I can make a video about COVID on itself, but it'd probably lose viewership too on my thoughts because I'm kind of the conspiracy crowd right now on on COVID and the shots and stuff. I'd say just don't trust the mainstream media. You're being played and lied to. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, No Way Home's doing great both critically and fan reception wise. But one thing I have heard, that some people are saying is the fact that there's a lot of fan service in the movie. And yeah, it's true. There's a lot of fan service in the movie, but I feel like it's kind of flows well and it doesn't feel forced. Like I think you can have fan service that just feels unnecessarily fan service in the movie is not good or whatever. I feel like the fan service in this works very well and it doesn't feel forced. It just feels natural for the most part. So I don't really have a problem with that. But so the first like 1/3 of the movie. Well, okay. So the thing with this movie is that it's like a 2.5 hour movie. I feel like the pacing on this movie is excellent. It doesn't feel like 2.5 hours. It felt more like it was like a 2 hour movie. It just flies by. I've seen it twice now, which is part of why I wanted to make this video, because I feel like after seeing it twice, I had a little more time to I just saw it the second time last night. I had a little more time to digest everything. And the fact that now, after seeing it twice, sold on it being my second favorite Spider-Man movie, where before I was like, I'm not sure if it's my second or third or fourth. I was kind of in there, need to see it again. Loved it even more the second time, which is a good thing, because I feel like some movies you'll see once, you see it again, and now after you've seen it again, you will notice more flaws, or not like the movie as much. I feel like there's other movies where you actually like the movie more as you see it more. And I feel like that's one of them. That's one of the reasons I actually love Force Awakens when you go to Star Wars, because I feel like that movie is a movie where the more you watch it, the more it looks like and just feels like a great movie. So that's what I have with this. And so the first third of the movie, there's been some complaints about. It's a little, I guess, I'm not sure what the first third complaints are exactly. I guess the thing is, in the movie, basically at the beginning, the first third of the movie, you have this situation where Peter, his identity had been out from far from home. It starts up right after that, literally right after that, where Jameson is on the screen and has the info about Peter being Spider-Man. And then MJ and him are kind of going away, and people are, wondering, did Peter kill Mysterio and this other stuff? I guess my biggest issue with that is that, and the thing, it does show a little bit of some interesting things, because you have a situation where, because of Peter and his relationship with his friends, they have trouble getting into a college. So you're seeing a little bit of the fact that people are connected to Peter now, and how that's kind of affecting their life, which is good. But I guess the thing is, you could maybe have expanded on that a little bit more when it comes to how that was affecting Peter and his friends. Hold on one second. Hold on, be right back. All right, sorry about that. So, just having a few technical difficulties. The stream not going quite how I was planning. I'm going to do a few other streams afterwards. But anyway, so the first third of the movie, basically, you have the situation where Peter and his friends, and the consequences of how they're having trouble getting into college because of knowing Peter. And I guess the thing with that is that you could have maybe expanded on that a little bit, going throughout the movie. And I guess also part of it is that after the first third of the movie, you kind of don't hear as much about Peter and his identity, in terms of how the world is reacting to that and stuff. So maybe you could have expanded on that more. But the thing is, um, just trying to think how to talk about this. So the two things I wanted to talk about the most are basically kind of, I guess you could say, the middle portion of the movie and the end. So basically, Peter in the movie, the villains all have kind of you could say, a simple story, and that's why, when people say there's fan service, sure there is, but I feel like the villains still work, because in Green Goblin's case, I'd say Goblin's the most evil. William Dafoe has the most spotlight, and really is the lead villain in this movie. And his his motivation, if you will, is pretty, I guess you could say, generic. He just basically wants to rule, but I think it works. Doc Ock is kind of a anti-hero in the movie, and then Electro just wants power. Sandman just wants to get home. And then Lizard's kind of the oddball one, I guess, because you kind of think, well, what does Lizard want out, compared to the other ones of wanting power, wanting to get home, and just wanting to, rule. So I feel like Liz is probably the one that doesn't fit the most. But basically, Peter is in a situation where it's said that if he sends these villains back to their dimension, if you will, that it will cause them to die because of basically what happened in their movies. So Peter wants to basically try to save him, which I think is it's an interesting yet simple message throughout the movie. Basically, the message is that if you can help people, do it, type of thing. That it's his responsibility to help these villains, and so with that, like I said, I feel like all the villains have. Man, this video is not going how how I was hoping. Just this is a hard movie to really describe, but with that, so basically, Peter he helps the villains by tries to help the villains by trying to find a way to kind of cure them, and then be able to send them back to the dimension. That way, if they didn't have their powers, things would have turned out differently, type of thing. And so with that, you get to the apartment condo part, which I think is like personally my favorite whole entire part of the movie. A lot happens in these several minutes where they're in the condo, and I love the way they've used the spider sense throughout the last two movies, and this goes into the condo scene. So you're in they're basically in the condo, and you have a situation where Spider-Man is able to use this machine to fix the chip that Doc Ock has that had gotten fried in Spider-Man 2. That way he can think more clearly and isn't being controlled by the tentacles. He's able to do that, so it helps him. Um, while that's going on, or shortly after that, and they have a nice scene too together after that. Where Doc Ock thanks Peter for helping him, and that he doesn't have all these voices in his head and stuff. During that time, like I said, a couple minutes after that, there's a part where Peter's, he starts to feel something. His spider sense is going off, and you kind of don't know what's going on exactly. And then, there's a part where basically Peter closes his eyes and he senses, to kind of just continue to try to sense what is going on here. What's the danger? He shoots a web at William Dafoe, Goblin. I'm not quite sure if in the situation if it was simply that he could fill William Dafoe and his Goblin half, if you will, coming out, or if it was actually that William Dafoe, Goblin, Norman Osborn, if he had something in his hand, or if it was a combination of both. But he shoots his web at William Dafoe's hand, and then Dafoe, is talking, and basically the Goblin's coming out, if you will, and he's says that's some trick. The fact that Peter was able to sense, that he was basically up to no good. And what's interesting about that too is one, the fact that the spider sense is strong enough that he can basically sense when someone, I guess you could say, is thinking of doing something before they've actually done it. So it's kind of like not immediate danger, because it's not you're trying to stop something that's actually already kind of started, but it's more sensing really what someone's where someone's mind is, if you will. So it's pretty darn powerful that he was able to do that, and really awesome. And with that, the thing that's interesting with this too is William Dafoe. You kind of see split personality in the movie. So you see that William Dafoe, as Norman, I guess I could just say Norman, but you see Norman has kind of a split personality with him, with the Green Goblin, and then his normal self. He's trying to fight it. He actually breaks the mask at one point. I think I think the big reason they did that was they just wanted to show William Dafoe's face and not have it blocked off as much, compared to how it was in Spider-Man 1, because William Dafoe is so good when it comes to showing his emotion and his laugh and just his crazy eyes and everything. And when you have the mask on, it kind of blocks that and kind of hurts his performance a little bit, because you don't get to see that. So there's an interesting choice in that. But yeah, it was interesting with that, because you kind of feel some sympathy for Norman in that situation, because he's in this new dimension. He has lost. He mentioned something about Harry and how his son has been lost. He also mentioned something about how he can't go home, or someone else is living there. I'm not sure if that's just simply the fact that now he's in a different dimension. So whatever that place is, there's literally someone living there, or if it's more of, again, a reference to the fact that he's got these split personalities going on, or what. But he wants help. Aunt May talks to him about how earlier in the movie in Feast area about how they need to help him, and it's a nice little speech about how he's lost and that Peter needs to help him, sort of thing. Peter feels like it's not his responsibility; that he just needs to get the villains back to their area. But anyway, back to the condo. So he senses Norman up to no good, and then Norman, starts to chase, and right before that, Peter tells Aunt May to run, and you have the sequence where Green Goblin and Peter start to fight, and it's really intense and very different than your traditional fights, because it's kind of similar to Spider-Man One Goblin fight at the end of the movie. It's very, very brutal um, fight where Green Goblin is basically just kicking Spider-Man's butt and like throwing him through the floors in the condo complex, and through the um, the walls and stuff. And there's this part in the fight where Peter is kind of up on Goblin, just punching him like a whole bunch, and Goblin just starts like with this crazy laugh. And it's just pretty terrifying that he's laughing like that while he's getting punched in the face, like it's no big deal. And it basically ends up leading to, they're getting towards the exit of the building, and Peter again tells Aunt May to run because she's kind of in the situation, and Aunt May was trying to help Peter. Peter was getting his butt kicked, and the goblin uses his glider. It hits Aunt May. She's on the ground, and then um, he throws a pumpkin bomb and leaves basically at towards Aunt May. It doesn't like hit her directly, but some stuff falls on her. Plus the fact she got hit by the glider, she actually gives the Uncle Ben "with great power comes great responsibility" speech. At first, you think maybe she's gonna be okay, but then Peter sees that she's bleeding really bad. She says a few more things. It's just a very emotional scene, and then she actually dies. Um, and what also made the scene even more like emotional is not only did she die, but then Happy comes in shortly after, basically right when this is happening. Happy comes in his car or whatever, and there's like a SWAT team outside, and they arrest Happy, and Happy's trying to warn Peter to like run, and Happy sees that that what happened. Basically, he sees Peter there and Aunt May on the ground, and realizes that Peter's lost his Aunt May. Really emotional scene. And then you have shortly after that, you have where, so this is probably my biggest issue with the movie overall, is that Ned, Peter's friend, never really seen him be able to use magic or anything, but he in the movie early in the movie, um, Peter and Doctor Strange kind of have a little bit of a fight. Peter in the mirror dimension, Peter gets the ring from him that can like open portals and stuff, and Doctor Strange is trapped in there during that time. Because Peter wanted to send these guys, or didn't want to send them home right away. He wanted to save them, where Doctor Strange was like, just send them home, type of thing. So, um, Ned ends up having the ability with that ring to open portals, which is just kind of weird and random, because he never really thought of Ned having the ability to use magic or anything. So it's one of those things. It's kind of like just happened because of the plot required it, type of thing. It feels like. So that's probably my biggest issue with the movie. But after Aunt May had died, they're trying to find. They don't know where Peter is exactly. They're trying to like kind of find him. They end up opening the portal, and the first one that comes through is Andrew Garfield, aka Peter Parker, Spider-Man from Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. It's really nice to see him in this movie. I personally think Andrew Garfield is basically, if he had better movies, it would be the Robert Downey Jr. for Spider-Man. He's just absolutely perfect in the role. Just unfortunately, his movies weren't the most successful. So it's nice to have him in a movie like this that's really, really good, solid, entertaining, emotional driven movie. And does an awesome job in his performance. So he shows up. Then, like a minute or so later, that another portal gets opened, and you have Tobey Maguire. So now we got the two past Spider-Mans, which was pretty cool in this movie. And so there's a few minutes where they're talking to Ned and MJ, and Toby kind of senses that Tom needs help because I guess he just somehow kind of knows or senses that something has happened. And in this case, it's the fact that Tom has lost um, his Aunt May. And also, right after Aunt May gets killed, you have this beautiful shot of Jameson talking on like a giant TV billboard type of thing, and it's raining, and just talking about like the mayhem that Spider-Man has caused, and you see Tom there looking at the screen and listening to it and stuff, and it's raining. It's just a really nice, beautifully sad shot scene. Um, and that's kind of right after that happens. And so anyway, you have the two Spider-Mans that come in from the past movies, and they find basically MJ and Ned. They find Peter in this area. They think he might be on like a rooftop, and it's a really nice scene because it's right after he's lost Aunt May, and they basically are just embracing him and hugging him and all crying together. Very emotional. And then you have this nice scene where Peter from this movie and the two other Peters, are talking and basically, talking about how they lost, someone. And Andrew, he references Gwen, which is nice that he references her. And he, talks about how he hasn't been pulling his punches and stuff. And basically that he's just bitter and, hurt, and that he doesn't want Tom Spider-Man to feel that he wants him to be like better type of thing. And and Toby references the fact that in Spider-Man 1, after he got his powers and after Uncle Ben died, that he chased down the killer and wanted to kill him. And basically just about how he felt that rage, if you will, and how it doesn't make it better. Type of thing. So it's basically a lot of just how they understand how Thomas' character is feeling now that his Peter lost his Aunt May, and that they just don't want him to go down that same path of feeling bitter and you know anger and all that stuff, type of thing. Then you have a nice scene where you get to see them kind of all interacting in a lab, and they're working to try to come up with an antidote for the villains so that the villains' powers can go away and they can send them back and kind of change their fate, if you will. It's just really nice seeing, three Peters all working in a lab together, because at the end of the day, again, they're Peters. They're all smart, high IQ, and you get some good interactions in there, some good jokes and stuff. And there's a joke in there about with Toby about how his best friend Harry tried to kill him and that he died in his arms, which I thought was sad but at the same time funny, because the other two Toms don't know the backstory on that, because one of the Ned, I believe, asked Toby if he had like a best friend or something, and that's kind of how that came about. And then you have during that time too, there's some talk too about, because Toby is the only one that has webs that just naturally come out of his body, and he doesn't have to make a web shoot or anything. So there's talk about that, which I thought was pretty funny, and they make some jokes about that. You can definitely say fan service, but it worked really well. And they actually joke about that a little bit again later when you get to the final fight. So the final fight is at the Statue of Liberty, where the villains are there, except for Goblin, who comes in a little bit later. There's a little bit of a time where he disappears. I think maybe Goblin was in a situation where he wanted everybody else to just kind of take each other out or something. Then he would come in or tire each other out. I'm not really sure what. It's a little weird, I guess, that Goblin has a little bit of a hiatus there. But you have that final area. You see the three Spider-Men fighting together, which was just awesome to see them, working together. There's some good dialogue there, and a joke about there's a joke about Toby and his back, which I thought was funny, just because he had some back issues back in the day as well, where they thought he might not return for Spider-Man 2. So it's kind of like a joke about that in a sense, and just some good dialogue there between Andrew and him about his back, and then they're talking about like the different villains that they fought and how Toby and Tom have both kind of fought like aliens, because Toby, Venom, and the symbiote type of thing. Tom with Thanos and the Avengers and stuff, and Andrew's talking about how he hasn't had the opportunity and how he would like to fight a alien. And it's funny too because he had the least successful movies Andrew Garfield did out of the three, although I don't think that was his fault again. But because of that too, I think that's kind of why they put that in there. But he says some things about how he's lame, and they are saying no, you're, and Tom's saying no, you're not, and stuff like that. And they have a part two where Andrew Garfield says something about "I love you guys," and it's just there's a lot of good dialogue. It's hard to really explain. It's one of those things if you haven't seen the movie. I don't know why you'd be watching a spoiler review, but that's for another story. But just some really good dialogue between the three, and just nice, like I said, seeing them fight together. So the um the interactions when they're in the lab, the like I said, the condo fight when Goblin is kicking Spider-Man's butt. That's like a lot of the movie, and I'd say that's where the movie starts picking up is the whole condo fight, which is like a little less than a halfway in the movie. That's when the movie really picks up. Not that the first third was bad or anything, just not as good. Um, so yeah, then you get to the last battle, and a lot kind of like the battle earlier in the movie in the condo, a lot more brutal than your typical battle, because it's just more, one on one type of fight, nothing flashy, if you will, and it's between Goblin and Tom's Peter, and you get to the point where um, Tom is just wailing on Goblin and wants to kill him, and actually it ends up picking up the glider of Goblin is actually to use it to stab um, Goblin, because he's feeling that rage and that anger that, Goblin is basically responsible for killing his Aunt May. And Toby comes in when Tom's about to try to stab Goblin and stops him. And I thought that was very fitting for Tom to be stopped by Toby's Peter, because um, Toby's the one who, because of a combination of things, the fact that you saw him try to chase down Ben's killer. I mean, sorry, Garfield, but you saw him, do that, and then later on it became Sandman, and he forgave Sandman. So because of that, and then like the fact that he with the symbiote, I know it was a symbiote. It wasn't just all Toby in Spider-Man 3, but he had that rage going. So with the symbiote and wanting to kill Sandman and stuff. So he knows Toby, I feel like really especially knows what it's like to have that rage and wanting, revenge. That was one of the big things with Spider-Man 3 was a theme of revenge, wanting revenge, and how that can make you into something you're not. Basically, how it can, make you a worse person, kind of control you. Because emotions in general are, a very human thing, and they can control you both good and bad, things like hatred, anger, and then you got things like they're better, like, happiness, um, laughter, stuff like that. But, Toby, he knows what it's like. So he stops Tom from stabbing Goblin. He doesn't say anything. You can just see it in his eyes, that he has this look of, hey, I've been there. I understand what you're feeling, but you can't do this. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to bring your Aunt May back. You're only in a, live with kind of regret if you do this later on, that you took someone's life. That it's not like the Spider-Man way, if you will. So just a really good, um, emotional and kind of surprising thing because I wasn't expecting to go there where Tom was actually going to use the glider on Goblin's own glider against him to stab and kill him. Toby actually got stabbed after that by Green Goblin. That's one of those things too. The Spider Sense, like I said, I love the way they've used it, but it's one of those you could say almost inconsistencies because you could say, well, Toby should have sensed that Goblin was about to do that, but yet he didn't. I don't know, but he gets stabbed. He ends up being okay though. Then Andrew Garfield ends up getting the antidote over to Tom, and he uses it on Green Goblin, and he's healed. So now they've healed him. So just a lot of that's not even the most emotional part of this movie, which I'm about to get to, which is the very, very end. But another thing I wanted to say is so you have I felt like both Tom, Andrew, and Toby all got, really good things because with Tom, you have this situation of him dealing with that rage. You had Toby kind of being somewhat redeemed, if you will, or having a chance to help someone else who's feeling that sort of rage, but not letting him feel this, go down that same path, if you will, with the whole glider and stopping him, which was really nice. And then going back to Andrew Garfield. So there's a part in the movie too where basically Goblin is comes in and grabs Tom's Peter when Tom was trying to save his girlfriend, and then Garfield ends up saving her, and it's a really nice and just kind of like emotional scene. I saw the movie originally on opening night, and when this happened, people cheered and they were also like, "Oh," because of the reaction that Garfield has. Because if you've seen the Spider-Man movies and Amazing Spider-Man 2, at the end of the movie, Gwen gets killed, and you know, Andrew Garfield's Peter is devastated and really good acting. And here he gets a chance and actually saves, um, a different Peter's love, and so it's kind of like a redeem because it's like, well, he couldn't save his love, but he was able to save the love of another um, another version of himself. And she says something to him about, "Are you okay?" And he's kind of crying, and he says yes. And I think and it's just really well um, executed, seeing the acting on it, and the fact that he starts crying adds to it because it shows that because of what happened with Gwen, and now that he was able to save this person, it kind of brings back those feelings. The fact that he wasn't able to save his, and it's just really well done um, acting. So, yeah, yeah, I feel like they did a good job with all three Spider-Mans, all the villains. Like I said, you have Doc Ock basically being kind of like an anti-hero. Goblin just wants to rule, which works. You have Electro just wants power. Sandman just wants to go home. And that's something I was a little confused on the first time I saw the movie because when you first see Sandman, and he doesn't know that he's in a different like dimension or whatever, and that there's a different Peter there. He says hi to Peter and do you remember me or whatever, and helps him fight, but he doesn't quite trust this Peter because then he realizes it's not his Peter that he knows, and he just again wants to get home so he can see his daughter. And towards the end of the movie, I was a little confused because like, well, why did he kind of go back with the villains if he were? But I think it was more just he wanted the bots thing so he could get home, and I think he was just worried about not being able to get home. So I don't think it was necessarily that he wanted to fight the Spider-Man. It was more just he wanted to get home, and was doing whatever it took to try to make that happen. So I think it was more if he was fighting in fear rather than, he was fighting because he actually wanted to like fight type of thing. So it works. There's also a nice scene with Doc Ock where he stops Electro and kind of acts like he was in a knot, like he was actually, on their side, which was nice. You have a nice scene with Doc Ock and Toby where, he basically says you've grown up and Doc Ock says, and asks him, how he's doing. And he says, Toby does that he's trying to do better, which is kind of a callback to Spider-Man 2 as well with that line. Um, so yeah, like I said, just fantastic job with the way they used the villains, the way they used all three Peters with getting the interactions in the lab. Just a lot of funny dialogue, banter back and forth. Um, they bring up a little bit the fact that Tom has worked as a team a little bit with because he's helped with the Avengers. The other two Spider-Mans have not, so they haven't, and they're not all of them aren't great necessarily working together, if you will. But Tom has a little bit of that experience, so they bring that up, so that's nice. Like I said, you had the end fight where like I said, that happens with Goblin almost getting killed and Toby stopping him. So that was really nice. So that's a lot of emotional beats. Now you get to the very end of the movie. Oh man, the very end of this movie is very emotional. It sets up a lot of interesting scenarios too going forward. So it's a combination of one, a lot of emotion, um, of why I like this movie a lot, especially the end, because I feel like emotion in movies is something that really is important for a movie to be good. I think it's one of the reasons that, in general, a lot of Disney movies, animated movies, and such are popular is that they tend to really make you care for the characters. And I think that's big when you truly care for the characters, rather than just having characters that are just kind of there and you don't really care. If you can if they can make you care for the characters, that's a big plus. And they did. And so after Goblin's defeated, the portals are still opening up from the spell because in the movie, the spell that let the villains come through was still kind of affecting things. And so basically, it becomes a situation where to kind of reverse more people that know Peter, because that was what the spell basically became, was it was became people who knew Peter coming through the portal. Um, and because it didn't have to be this Peter. That's why you had the multiverse whole thing going on, was because it was people that knew Peter from any dimension, which is why you had villains coming through that knew Peter from like the Raimi movies or from the web movies. And so basically Peter ends up making the spell to ask Doctor Strange and because when Doctor Strange is saying there's nothing they can do, whatever, and they basically end up having to make the spell where not just people forgetting Spider-Man, but people actually have to forget who Peter is. Now, this brings up a few interesting questions though, because I understand it doesn't erase like things that have happened, um, you know, type of thing. It's just more people's memory. So um, basically, because of that, if you knew Peter, you're not going to remember him now. Okay, I get that. And like I said, it doesn't change if things happen though. So if you if you say in MJ's situation, she got a cut on her head towards the end of the movie, that still happened even after the spell goes through and she loses her memory. But the thing, and I don't know if this is, if I guess this is just, you could say, maybe a big plot hole. I don't know. Movies have plot holes, but I would feel like any sort of media, if you will, photos, videos, that kind of stuff would still be there because, again, it's not that this stuff didn't happen. It's just people are forgetting. And so what that means is, for example, with people who knew that were close to Peter, I would think would still have photos of him. So, for example, if MJ has a photo of Peter, but she doesn't actually remember Peter, like it seems weird because it would be like, well, then she'd probably be thinking to herself, who in the heck is this person? How to get a photo of them? That type of thing. And because there was some like the Mysterio footage out there that showed who Peter was, and hey, thanks for tuning in. Because there is that video of Peter being shown to be Spider-Man, you would think that that video would still be out there showing that he's Spider-Man. But then I don't know, maybe it would be a situation where uh, people would see his face, but because people don't actually know who Peter is or something. But then at the same time, the video you had him saying Peter is Spider-Man. So I don't know. But boy, is it sad because in the past Spider-Man movies, even when things have went bad, he still had, a Harry there or Aunt May there or something. But now with the whole memory thing, Peter doesn't have a girlfriend. He doesn't have a best friend. He doesn't have an Aunt May. He's got nobody. And I mean, that's just like, really sad. And at the end of the movie, too, Happy comes there at when the boat at the when Peter's at the gravestone. Happy comes there and asks him how he knows, you know, her because now he doesn't have that memory that um that's his aunt and that he's her nephew. And that's another one too. It's just like ugh, sad. Um and he Peter goes back because right before the spell was like activated, he has like a kind of a goodbye, if you will, with Ned and MJ, and says that he's going to come find him and kind of try to get them to remember again since they're not having this memories. But when he goes back there, he kind of sees that they have gone into college and that MJ still has that cut, and just kind of realizes that if he does try to let them know who he is again, that he's going to put them, I guess, in danger again. So he doesn't. So now you have a Peter who is all by himself. And it raises a lot of possibilities because with losing his aunt, I think in real life, anytime you lose someone that you care about, I don't think you ever, um, completely get over it. You just kind of get to the point where you're a little more used to it, if you will. But I think you still have those moments of, where you feel sad and where you miss the person. And if it's a case like this where that person was actually basically murdered, you're going to have, I think, some sort of anger and bitterness at that person that took your loved one away. And so now because of that, you really do wonder, well, do they introduce the symbiote, and how does that play into if they do? Because it could get really, really dark. I heard someone else mention this because of the fact that if you introduce the symbiote and he's still having these emotions of, loneliness and um, loss and all this, and now he has no one to kind of keep him in check. You could go pretty dark because again, in Spider-Man 3, when he had the symbiote, at least he still had his aunt there. Now he doesn't have that. So it's just very interesting what they can do with that. And with people kind of not knowing who he is, too, if you want, you can introduce like a lot of new characters to, you could, reintroduce like a Harry Osborn or something. And I'd say as a whole, with these three home movies, my biggest issue as a whole is that I haven't really cared much for the supporting characters. There's still really good movies, I feel like, because the villains they've done a good job on, and the villains are a huge part of why I love Spider-Man. He has a lot of really good villains. And I feel like they've done a really good job on all the villains and the action scenes and some of that emotion. But I feel like the side characters I haven't cared for too much. Where in the Raimi Spider-Man movies, I liked Harry a lot. I love Jameson a lot. Although you do have Jameson back now, so that helps perhaps going forward. I wasn't huge on the way they used Jameson in this movie though. Um, but yeah, you have just a lot of possibilities going forward, which is interesting in itself and exciting, and just the fact that, like I said, the movie has a lot of emotion. You also have, I also like that there's a few times in the movie too, um, that because of when the movie takes place, the movie kind of takes place in the winter around Christmas, if you will, which is nice. I love Christmas, by far my favorite holiday. So I thought that was cool. Like there's early in the movie when Doctor Strange and Peter are kind of fighting, um, and they're in the mirror dimension. There's like a scene where they're in like kind of like a mall or something briefly, and you hear like some Christmas music and stuff. So I thought that was cool. The very, very, very end of the movie, after Peter and no one knows who he is. He's got in this small apartment. Um, I didn't quite notice that, but people are saying maybe he was trying to still get his high school diploma now because of the fact that people don't know who he is. Maybe he has to finish his GED. That there might have been a book with that or something. I'm not sure, but he's got an apartment. It'd be kind of funny if they brought back the same actor from Spider-Man 1 to 3 to play like the landlord, and where's me money? Rent and all that stuff. So that would be funny. But Peter's in that apartment now. by himself. He actually has a sewing kit. He builds a new costume. I really, really want to see a like a high definition, good look at the new costume because the new costume looked pretty cool and it looked very classic in terms of just the colors and everything. It was pretty shiny, but at the same time, it's nighttime, a lot of lights and stuff. But he's swinging through the snow, which is just really cool. But I really want to see a new um, screenshot just to get a better look at that suit since it's just in the very very end one scene and it's kind of brief. Um, but yeah, I love this movie. A lot of heart I feel like this movie has with the interactions between the Peters, with Peter losing Aunt May, the Norman Osborn stuff, and man, William Dafoe. It's just he's too good in the role. Before this movie, I had a hard time kind of going between William Dafoe as Goblin and Alpha Molina as Doc Ock for the best live action Spider-Man movies because they're both so good in the roles. But after this, I think I gotta give the edge to William Dafoe as Goblin. He was the main villain in this. Uh, to be fair though, so he did have like the most to work with, if you will. Um, where Alpha Molina was kind of the second villain. The other ones were kind of more supporting. But both did a good job and just fantastic movie, a lot of emotion. Highly recommend if you haven't seen this, do it now. Seen it twice. Probably will wait now to watch it again when it comes on video. I have went to a movie like 3 times before for a few movies, but it's not something I do too often because it's expensive to go to the movies, and those. So I might just wait now. But anyway, I didn't mean to make this video this long. I was actually planning on making about half this long. But that's just my thoughts of the movie. Love it. 10 out of 10. Second favorite Spider-Man movie. And the fact that I liked it more the second time, I think, is a good sign. The fact that, flaws and stuff didn't bother me more the second time or whatever. So, yeah, go see it now if you haven't. I'm going to make a couple other videos here after this one, maybe right after, shortly here, before I eat dinner and watch some basketball and stuff. But as always, thanks for tuning in. Thumbs up, comments below if you've seen the movie, what you thought of it, and just like your overall thoughts of the Spider-Man movies, both from Raimi, Webb, Into the Spider-Verse, heck, even the games if you want. As always, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe below.